So some of you may have heard of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. You may have also heard of the A-10 Warthog, Thunderbolt II, or the Tank Buster, as we call it. I'm here to spread the word about the Save the Hog campaign, is what we've come to affectionately call it in the Air Force. I'm going to talk about three different things. Reasons why the Air Force wants to get rid of the aircraft, budget facts about the F-35 and the A-10, and then also some mission capabilities of the two aircraft. I've worked as a crew chief for the last 14 years on the A-10. Those duties have ranged from working on the aircraft, replacing parts as a mechanic, to being a section chief, overseeing approximately 60 personnel at any one time. I've also worked in the production flight, which maintains oversight of the actual maintenance of the aircraft and the flying hour program. So one of the reasons that the Air Force is trying to get rid of the aircraft is for fiscal responsibility. In an interview with the Air Force Times, General Mark Welsh, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, stated that it's not about liking or disliking the aircraft, and it's not about not wanting the aircraft. It's about making the hard choices to recapitalize the Air Force for the future 10 years from now. Now, the A-10 is pushing 40 years old. It takes quite a bit to maintain the aircraft and keep it in the air. It actually, one of the reasons the Air Force is trying to get rid of the aircraft is to save $3.5 billion over 5 years. If they disperse the A-10, that's how much they'll save in 5 years. It's $3.5 billion. Meanwhile, the F-35 program cost the Air Force $200 million per aircraft, and they're supposed to receive 100 aircraft in the next 3 years. So if you do the math, the Air Force is spending $20 billion in 3 years for one aircraft to be able to attain a new airframe. Now, with that, basically what that tells me is, with getting rid of the A-10 aircraft and taking on the F-35, the Air Force is now spending $16.5 billion more to bring on a new airframe, rather than just keep the old aircraft, the A-10, flying. Okay, the A-10 costs $17,000 per hour to fly. The F-35 costs $35,000 per hour. Maybe that's why they call it the F-35. It's $35,000 an hour. The F-35 program has lots of funding from the Air Force. Their annual budget is $16.5 billion, and from that money, they use that money for other programs in the Air Force. I've seen it firsthand from commanders, where they'll use F-35 money to build a new facility for, say, an F-16 or an F-15 aircraft. It's not really what that money is supposed to be used for, but they find creative ways to incorporate those programs into the F-35 program. We also have what's called, we'll talk a little bit about the Air Force budget, but only two aspects of it. Just to give you an idea, we have the F-35 budget, which is the $16.5 billion a year. We also have what's called AFREP. It's the Air Force Repair Enhancement Program, where Air Force personnel will repair aircraft parts instead of sending them back to the manufacturer, which saves the Air Force money. So those units actually recoup that money as extra money at the end of the year. Now, instead of using that money wisely and putting it back into the big Air Force budget to save the big Air Force money, we use that money as what they call fallout money. It's a use it or lose it kind of program. If we don't use it by the end of the fiscal year, then we lose it for the next year, and we don't ever get that money back. So we find creative ways to spend that money. We get 60-inch plasma, flat-screen TVs, iPads, all kinds of nifty little gadgets and toys that we really don't need. The point is if we were to put that money back into the big Air Force budget, we could probably maintain the A-10 aircraft indefinitely just on the extra money that we don't need to spend. Now we'll go over a little bit about the maneuverability of the aircraft and the capabilities of both the A-10 and the F-35. So the A-10 flies lower and slower than any other aircraft in the fleet. The F-35 can hover, or not hover, but basically fly around one area for about 30 minutes at a time, and then it has to return for fuel. The A-10 can maintain that same area of responsibility for about 2 hours, which basically means all of our ground troops, all the soldiers on the ground, both U.S. and UN soldiers alike, for 2 hours at a time, they have coverage from the air. So if they're in a firefight anywhere during that 2 hours, they've got somebody watching out for them. Now, in talking with soldiers from Fort Bragg, where I was stationed for 7 years, they've said on many occasions that the A-10 swooping in and firing its gun, to them is the sound of freedom. They know that they're going to make it home at some point that day because the A-10's got its back. So, basically, wouldn't you like to be responsible for saving soldiers' lives? I encourage all of you to write your representatives, senators, congressmen, whatever it may be, and have them fight to keep the A-10. Again, we've covered the reasons the Air Force wanted to get rid of the fleet, the A-10 fleet, some budgetary facts, and also some capabilities of both aircraft, the A-10 and the F-35. The Save the Hog campaign, as we've come to call it. Again, when you get home, write your representatives and demand that they take action and save the A-10. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sitting here and enduring that.
Yeah.
Right